Denise K. I am Director of First Year Writing at Duke University. Duke University's writing program is a bit unique in that it is a multidisciplinary first year writing program. So we offer around 140 to 150 sections of first year writing for all incoming or all first year Duke students. But the courses can be taught by people with PhDs across the disciplines, from sociology, history, anthropology, biology, environmental studies, English. And so our challenge over the years has been to show students why you can have drastically different theme-based courses taught by people across the disciplines, and yet still, whether you're in section 210 or 133, you will still learn the same core writing practices and moves. So today I'm going to be speaking with you about a transfer-based framework for interdisciplinary communication, teaching, and research, and it builds from my experience working with this incredibly smart and interesting multidisciplinary cohort over the 15 years that I've been there, and also most recently from my textbook, Writing in Transit, which also focuses on a transfer-based framework. So I will start with the opening metaphor. My background is in English and writing studies, so I'll start with a metaphor, which metaphors are always imperfect, but they are helpful sometimes too, that opens this book, and then I'll branch out for the rest of the talk. So Chaco Canyon is in New Mexico, and it was built by the Chaco and Asazi people in 850 to 1250 AD. CE, and there is still a lot of mystery surrounding this structure, but it's hailed as one of these incredible moments of interdisciplinary collaboration across architecture, math, science, culture, commerce. What's unique and interesting and illustrative about Chaco Canyon for my purposes is that there were these great houses there, and we're not sure what they were used for, but we're thinking they were used for ritual practices of various kinds. But they were enormous structures that had as many as 750 different rooms in them. And these great houses all had unique characteristics, but also had some shared characteristics among them that at the solstices, through windows and doors, everything lined up, right? So the people in the great houses could know when the solstice happened. Also at Chaco Canyon is the sun dagger at the solstice. It's 3 slabs, and at certain times of the year, the sun shines through specifically. So the idea for this metaphor is that Chaco Canyon illustrates the incredible power and potential of interdisciplinary collaboration, but also the incredible challenge of actually speaking across disciplines and communicating across disciplines, right? That you have to actually have it aligned, and you might think you're communicating, but you're really not, because there are many challenges. So I wanted to acknowledge, of course, that interdisciplinary collaboration occurs around us all of the time. And I'm not necessarily arguing for more interdisciplinary collaboration, though I am somewhat. With Wheel Scout, for instance, you said that the computer science people, right, were working with philosophers and ethicists, right? So, or that was helpful. This map shows networks across the sciences of interdisciplinary collaboration, and you can see that there is a large amount of collaboration within the sciences. This is a heat map of disciplines that are conducting research in human-computer interaction, and the green is the hottest areas, followed by orange and then yellow. But you can see that there are a lot of disciplines also who focus on a particular issue and contribute together to build knowledge on that. As another example, this is from an EdTech magazine, learning theory, right? That many, many disciplines across a whole spectrum build knowledge about learning theory. Still, there are several challenges amidst all of this interdisciplinarity. One of them is that the clusters of network flow are often kind of concentrated between particular disciplines. sometimes ones that are not really very far apart. You can get away with calling something interdisciplinarity when really it's maybe a collaboration between two closely related disciplines, right? In this case, this is information flow between networks of disciplines, and you can see that the largest network there is between psychology and psychiatry, and they're very different disciplines also, but they're more alike than, let's say, English and psychiatry. Another challenge here is that certain disciplines tend to embrace interdisciplinarity more than others. So this scatter diagram has the clinical medicine and earth and space, I guess, are on the lower end where most of the journal articles in this field, according to these researchers, tend to be very discipline specific, right, working within their own network. And then towards the other end, you have humanities and, I guess, psychology and the arts that tend to be more interdisciplinary in nature. Another challenge is that overall the aggregate number of people working in interdisciplinary contexts is really pretty low. So this does show, it reinforces the prior slide that social sciences and humanities tend to be more interdisciplinary than natural sciences or STEM fields in some ways. However, you can see that the numbers are still pretty low, right, in ones that are explicitly calling themselves interdisciplinary. And I should say there's good reason for this, right? So some of the, many of the top-ranked journals in each of our disciplines are not interdisciplinary journals, right? They are journals within our fields. And what I should have said at the outset, too, is that I really do embrace disciplinary knowledge. So Duke very explicitly, we don't call our writing program an interdisciplinary writing program. We call it a multidisciplinary writing program because we wanted to avoid eliding disciplines, right? We wanted to honor disciplinary knowledge at the same time as thinking about communication across disciplines. And so a more insidious, I think, problem shaping interdisciplinary conversations that are happening involves geography and culture. And that's okay. And this, it's okay, it's fine. This map. Can I answer that phone? This map shows, and really I have to say, this was an article and I could hardly understand what I was reading because it was really heavy with the methods and the statistics, but the overall gist is that there's a power law in that the greater the geographic distance, the less likely collaboration and citation networks are, so that we tend to collaborate in geographically proximate places. And that's true, according to these researchers, even across the sciences, which is a field where many funders kind of encourage multi-institutional collaboration. But so again, so we have this declining thing. So the farther we are away from each other, the less likely we are to collaborate. And this, of course, creates or instantiates, I guess, differences in distance. Okay, so in my field, we think about these challenges of why there is interdisciplinarity happening, and yet there are all these challenges nested within it. We can think about it within the context of David Russell's activity theory, which you probably know about, but I will go over very briefly, suggests that networks and social systems kind of define, shape, and reflect our discourse, and that the mediational tools, the way that we output communication or shape communication, is always structured by the subjects that we're working with, the people and the ideas, as well as our motives and outcomes, and that these tend to be kind of often, they're dynamic, but they're often working within a smaller network than they might otherwise be. The way this ends up emerging is that people in different disciplines, whether we know it or not, or admit it or not, often work within a particular pattern of communication. And some of these are visible and explicit, and some are less are more tacit in nature. But it includes the way we make knowledge claims, of course the methods, that's not a surprise to anyone, but even the inflections of the methods, right? Qualitative or quantitative methods across disciplines look very different. We have discipline-specific terminology that we might be pretty aware of which terms are particularly nested in our disciplines, but even some other terms that we think are pretty widely known might not be. We have disciplinary networks of knowledge, and we tend to go to the same databases. We use the same key terms when we're searching within disciplines, and a person from another discipline would probably be relying on a whole different set of databases and terms in order to do similar research or a similar set of interests. And one of my favorite, I shouldn't say that, one interesting aspect of that I recently discovered is through Tian Donahue does a lot of work with international writing studies, and she keeps a database of international works on writing studies. And she says one of her favorite things to do is that people will say, oh, I'm gonna either work on this question, or I'm going to work with a graduate student on this new question that nobody has ever studied. And she says, oh, no, somebody over here, somebody's already done this, right? Because we have very limited kind of myopic, maybe that's too strong a word, we have limited networks of knowledge often that we're working within. There are also sentence level aspects that are particular to the genres in which we write and the expectations that we work within, which all help us be successful in our disciplines and continue to build knowledge in our disciplines. But when we're trying to move across disciplines, they present challenges. And then finally, with form, genre, and structure, those two are often highly nested within our disciplinary conventions. I'll track a little bit of research on more specifically what differences occur in discourse across disciplines, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the transfer framework and how we can think about it as a helpful strategy. So Betty Samraj has studied introductions in theses, master's theses, and you can see that across philosophy, biology, and linguistics, most introductions have a stated goal as in an argument of the thesis. But when we get to that first one in terms of like the centrality of the claim and the importance in the real world or importance in research, there's a lot more diversity across disciplines. Ken Hyland has done a lot of work on disciplinary-based discourse, and what he has discovered is that the frequency of self-mention, and I get this question as a writing teacher all the time from students, right? Am I allowed to use I? Should I use the we? What do I do? So, and that's because what students don't necessarily understand yet, and because they're new to the academy, what we know is that in certain disciplines you use it in certain contexts, and in certain contexts you don't. And this illustrates some differences. The number of citations also varies drastically across disciplines. And we have in sociology, the average, according to Hyland's research, was 104. This is in 99, so it might be different now. And in physics, 24.8. And the way that we cite work also varies incredibly too. So I actually got through most of graduate school thinking that everybody in the academy doing research used block quotes, like long block quotes and quoted sentences. And then it was only when I really started collaborating with other colleagues and talking with other people that I realized that no, that's not the case. And so here we have difference in the way that people present citations. And as a more recent, 2011, they looked at, I don't have my notes up here, so I think this is what I wrote down, 6.5 million different articles across nearly 6,000 journals. And the citation rates that they discovered were quite different in terms of how many citations were within each article across these disciplines. Okay, so what people in my discipline know about transfer. It has to do with learning transfer and writing transfer. How usually it's framed within how we can help facilitate for students the awareness and knowledge that what they learn about writing in one context can be reshaped, redeployed, repurposed, challenged, rethought for subsequent writing and learning occasions. The key aspects that I think we focus on in writing pedagogy that are also helpful for us as scholars in thinking about facilitating interdisciplinary communication are the following: reflection and meta-awareness, some kind of a knowledge about asking yourself, why am I choosing to present a citation this way? Why am I choosing to structure it this way? Why am I choosing to communicate in this way? And just being aware of the disciplinary inflections within your research and writing. High road transfer has to do with deliberate moves where you're thinking, oh, I worked in this way in this context, and I'm going to again do it in this way. Low road are less aware, more invisible aspects of transfer. There's also positive and negative transfer. Positive where you do something again and it works really well, and then negative is where you make the wrong move. Oh, I thought I was supposed to have block quotes and everything, and suddenly, my article got rejected because this journal doesn't do that. Learner disposition. We're actually embarking this year, my colleagues and I, on a study about learner disposition and transfer to understand it more specifically, but it has to do with your level of confidence, your personality, and your experience, and how that works together to make you more or less inclined to think about transfer. And then finally, one of the things that I like the most, Rebecca Nowacek has the idea of agency, that as teachers, we need to help students be aware that they are agents of transfer. And so I also think that we can be agents for ourselves of transfer. And so I have a few ideas, and I will close in a moment. So in terms of applying this transfer framework for interdisciplinary collaboration and writing about our research, we can think about, this is supposed to be venue in one word, but we can think about where we are disseminating our work. If we are primarily publishing in discipline-specific journals, of course, by all means, yes, but is there another way that you can also make your writing more public in some way, or publish in open access journals, or create different versions of it for international journals or interdisciplinary journals? Conferences like this as another example. This discourse, this is from a web text by Kais and Kais. They were specifically talking about the differences between very scholarly forms of communication and more public forms of communication, which is it's a different version of what I'm talking about, not necessarily across disciplines, but they had even the titles of these three different iterations of this research, which really illustrated the movement from discipline-specific terminology to more accessible terminology. So the original research was this one in Science, How Cats Lap, Water Uptake by Felis Catus. Then in Technology Review, The Physics of How Cats Drink. And then the most public was Scientists Reveal Secret of a Cat's Lap. And a transfer framework for teaching. There are many, many different ways that we can help students discover their own agency with transfer. And it really actually doesn't take too much. It's a couple sentences every once in a while in the middle of a lecture or after an assignment or through reflection, encouraging them to think about what were the disciplinary conventions and expectations that shaped this assignment, that shaped your response to this assignment, that has built this knowledge, created this knowledge. It doesn't mean that you have to know how other disciplines would have approached it, but that you're encouraging students to think about when they go to, they're the ones who are taking all of these different classes across the disciplines. So you can ask them to think about the writing processes and practices that shift and vary across disciplines. My archaeologist colleague talks about writing up her articles. Like, I'll just write up the article this weekend because I've already done all my research. And for me, I spend months in the writing part, right? Because that's really the part for me of where I figure out what I'm saying. For her, she really can do it in a weekend because she spent all that time beforehand doing all the research. So writing processes vary differently. We can make our course materials and course development more accessible and available across disciplines so we can know what other faculty are doing in other units and see shared opportunities for additional collaboration. I'll speed through because I only have a couple more. And finally, so I had a little visual of like these people sitting around a table listening because I thought about, but then I liked this one, which is from a Facebook post recently where the two dogs were fighting over the tennis ball, and then that one dog tries to create peace in the middle. But you can see that, well, often in administration and service in our committee work, we're in interdisciplinary spaces. And sometimes that works brilliantly, and then sometimes where you're fighting for resources or really not communicating, where people say things, and sometimes I'm like, I heard you speak, and I just don't understand. I don't understand the words you were using. I don't understand your motives and your agenda. So I think in administration and service, really thinking explicitly through a transfer framework can facilitate more dialogue. And as a way of encouraging, again, not necessarily encouraging more interdisciplinarity, just encouraging more explicit awareness of how to communicate well across disciplines in the moments that you already do, and thinking about whether your interdisciplinary communications are as interdisciplinary as they might be, right? Or are they kind of narrow? And if so, is that okay with you? Betty Samaraj again has shown that she said that in the first 2 or 3 years after an interdisciplinary publication, the impact rate goes down, but that 13 years out, apparently the reach and impact of scholarship that's published in more interdisciplinary spaces does have greater citation rate and impact across time. And I'll end with that. Thank you.